Storytime with Frog is the review of one woman's life who has lived the spectacle of FROG, or fully reliant on God. Not a storybook or Cinderella story, but in fact, the full history of ups and downs, joys and trials of life, the human condition, and this one woman's journey guided by her strength and faith in God. It's not all tulips and roses, but a beautiful rosebush has plenty of thorns. Life is designed to be this way, even when led by Him. Join us for Storytime with Frog with Veda McGregor and Rob Dalton.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Storytime with Frog, fully reliant on God. I am Rob Dalton.
Veda McGregor.
Veda McGregor back in studio. We are here to talk about her life story, her audio version of the autobiography of Veda's life, living with faith, living with purpose, even though undefined as it was, but living with trust, acceptability, unconditional love and acceptance for everything you were and those around you. And now that you, in the past, fully reliant on God, you have gotten into grade school. You're learning about other people's lives. Not every home is like your own. You're learning the emotions of rejection and losing friends for reasons that aren't your fault. Things happen. Life starts teaching you, hey, brace yourself. More's coming.
Yeah.
and that's where we kind of are with you right now.
Yeah.
But as a child, you just have to learn to understand and cope and move on. And you were learning to do that.
Yes. It began to speed up at about 5 years old,
Yeah.
I would say.
Okay.
About 5. So not quite in school yet. But went home. One of those times I went home from church.
Yeah.
With another family, and happened to be our Sunday school superintendent, and we went out into the garage after we had lunch. We went out into the garage to grab our hula hoops, because we would always go to her house after church and hula hoop after.
Okay.
And so
Again, 60s.
Right, that's what we did for funsies.
We did.
There was no
We
tablet, no phone, none of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And television exposure was quite limited.
It was limited. Yes.
My dad called it the idiot box, and so and he said that relative to the news, so everything else was definitely idiocy beyond that. But
We learned to play outside.
yes, we did learn to play outside, and I liked going over to these friends' house. As our superintendent, we loved her. The mom pierced my ears with a needle and a potato. It was so cool.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I still have those single holes in each ear to this day.
It still worked.
It worked great. But she had, this lady had married a man that she'd met in the prison ministry that she was participating in. And so we had come home from church, and we're looking for our hula hoops out in the garage. And they were not hanging from the 10-penny nail that they were always hanging from. So, we're looking around, trying to find them. And I've been over and kind of got my head close to the ground, and I could see them across the garage. And so I said, hey, I found them. So we go over there, and, those rolling toolboxes that most folks have
Like
in
the
their garage.
Craftsman kind
Yes,
of thing,
Craftsman
yeah.
rolling toolbox. So I could see them underneath this toolbox. And so it took both of us to move this toolbox over. And when we moved the toolbox over, just pulled it out away from the wall just a little bit. Well, these two hula hoops rolled out and fell to the ground flat, and in the middle of them fell a pornographic magazine called Cherry magazine back then, and it just fell splayed open, centerfold open right there.
Yeah.
Well, at 5 years old, I'd not been exposed to anything like this before, not in any form or fashion.
The only nudity was your own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, I went from a kid who prior to that, I did not have any recollection of my feet being on the ground, on the planet, even though I was here. But in this moment, at that particular time, as I'm looking at the women that are in that centerfold, captured on those 2 pages together, something began to happen to my body.
Yep.
My body began to respond to these images. And my body responded in ways that all of a sudden I have what I later discover wash over me as shame.
Yeah.
Shame washed over me. I don't even know what that is.
Another fresh emotion.
Another fresh emotion. I didn't know what in the world shame was. I didn't even know what I was looking at.
Right.
I mean, that's not my mother, and that's not my sister, and it's certainly not me. So what is that?
Yeah.
And why do I feel this way? So I remember that was the moment that my feet hit the planet. When that feeling of shame washed over me, my feet hit the ground.
Sure.
And
That'll
I felt the magnetic pull
It'll ground
of
you.
gravity
Yeah.
in that moment through my body. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. At all. I knew it was wrong. I knew whatever I was feeling was
Whatever
wrong.
it was wrong. Yeah.
Was wrong. Yes. And I didn't know what to do with that. So she was scared. I was scared.
Your friend.
My friend was scared because this was her stepdad.
Yeah.
And then later, of course, we found out other things were going on we didn't know about. But so this first exposure to pornography.
Yeah.
Right there, 5 years old.
5 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. Feet hit the ground, innocence gone.
Was it on purpose? Not by you. But
Absolute setup.
Yeah.
Absolute setup. Yes, yes. And it turned out he was a child predator and all that kind of stuff. We didn't know any of that at the
Early
time.
grooming, I think, is
Very much grooming.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Well, even if you don't know what it is, your body still reacts, and
It
that's
does.
what you were feeling.
It does. Yes.
Again, when you lead with the heart, it's the first thing sometimes that's injured.
It is.
Because your brain
It's
didn't know
always the
what was
first
going
thing.
on, but your heart did.
Yes.
It knew shame. It knew, it registered because those were your ears and your eyes were within your heart.
That was my innocence that just got dropped on
your
that
brain was trying to
concrete.
catch up, but your heart knew what it was.
Yep.
And you responded physically.
Yep.
It's a tough adaptation.
It is.
In the moment.
It is. And people, the thing about pornography, what that created that day, that created a sex addict that day.
Yeah.
At 5 years old.
The seed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it happens, and it's not just you.
No, not at all. Not at all. There are many people out there that are grooming with intent like that.
Yeah.
And I just happened to hit the wrong place at the wrong time.
In the innocence of a hula hoop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's when they're, again, vulnerable.
Totally. Yes. Yeah.
And then you were a regular, shifting gears to, again, more learning lessons as you get deeper into grade school. You were a regular everyday attendant in school.
Yes. I loved school.
And there were a couple people weren't always at school. They were, for whatever reasons, they just stayed at home, or parents kept them, or who knows, maybe they were working on the side or something.
Yeah.
But there were some kids that were part-time school students.
Yeah, they'd come and go.
Yeah.
Never really knew why.
They were always invited, but didn't often attend.
Yep.
And sometimes doing the right thing comes at a price. And this is where it's not just a story about learning, but it's the defining character. It's how powerful character can be.
Yes.
And tell the story about your test, your test paper.
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade, yeah.
Fifth grade,
So you were around 10-ish. Yeah, 10 or 11.
Mrs. Rothrock. I'll never forget Mrs. Rothrock. God bless her. Yeah, we had, it was a major exam. And for me, I was very blessed in having a sister who wanted to be a teacher who taught me how to learn. She taught me how to learn.
Yep.
So it didn't take effort at all for me to learn and comprehend what I was learning. So not a lot of study or anything like that. It was just a matter of do the homework, turn it in, read over the questions,
retain
and
it.
take the test, and you're good to go. So I didn't have to do a lot to get ready for it, and I sat up closer to the front and taking the exam, and me and this other kid in the class, I don't remember his name, but we both missed the same questions. Got like a 96, so I still got an A. And at this point, I hadn't gotten anything lower than an A in my school work. So yay, I got an A, so I felt fine. Well, next thing I know, I get called into the office a little while later. And I'd never been to the office before. So I wasn't quite sure what it was about. I thought maybe I was going to get an award or something.
Sure.
You know. So I get called to the office, and a little bit of me is kind of excited. But then as I get there and I'm hearing the conversation, there's an accusation that I cheated off of a boy's test. And when we took the test, and I was like, wait a minute, what? Well, the teacher told the vice principal that that's what happened. Because the boy made the same grade as I did and missed the same ones as I did, I cheated off of him. Well, there's no way I could have cheated off of him. He was sitting behind me in caddy corner, off to the right.
So diagonally.
Diagonally, yeah.
Behind you.
Behind me. And I was there every day.
But they weren't going to listen to reason.
No. So I was, they implemented that I was getting 3 licks for cheating. That was the punishment for cheating at that time. So I went in and bent over and grabbed my knees, and I got a board on my butt 3 times. I was absolutely humiliated.
Another new emotion.
Another new emotion. Now I'm humiliated.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
So then now I have to go home.
And these are people you trusted, the teacher and the
Oh my gosh, yes. I loved Mrs. Rothrock. She was a hard teacher, a very hard teacher. And I loved hard teachers because they challenged me. I didn't like it to be easy. So I had a special place in my heart, still do, for Mrs. Rothrock. But anyway, so they went ahead and gave the licks. Well, now it's time to walk home after school that day. Well, when you grow up in a small town, and in my family, if you get in trouble somewhere outside of home, you're going to get in trouble all the way home.
Yeah.
And then when you get home...
Sometimes the news will beat you home.
Oh, yes. Small communities, they talk. So I get home. My mom gets home from work. Well, they had called her, and she didn't answer the phone because she was in the middle of work. And she said, I missed a call from the school. What happened? And so I had to tell her. Well, I just knew, okay, well, I'm going to have to go wait in my room to get my other licks.
Right.
Because I got licks at school. And my mother didn't respond that way. In fact, she called the school and said, I will be there first thing in the morning. I want to meet with their teacher. Oh, not what I expected.
This is complicated.
This
is
is getting worse. This is not getting better. This is getting worse. I just wanted it to go away. I'd already gotten humiliated. I just wanted it to disappear and go away. No, my mother takes me the next morning to school. I did not get taken to school. I walked to school. It was just around the corner. And now my mother's walking me into school, so it's going to be a big deal. So we go in the next morning. We go into the principal's office, and the principal is there now.
It got upgraded.
It got upgraded from the vice to the principal. And so the principal called Mrs. Rothrock in. And my mother's talking to him, and she said, I'd like to see the grade book. I'd like to see the grade book. So my teacher went back, got her grade book, brought it back. And in the meantime, what they are discovering through their conversation is, in fact, this little boy rarely came to class. And when he did, he really didn't do work or turn in work. So he didn't have hardly any grades in the book. What he had was just a few grades, and then that one grade where we had the same grade, the 96.
Yeah.
So my mother very quickly pointed out those differences to the teacher, and you could see it washing all over Mrs. Rothrock because she didn't really pay attention to that at the time, obviously. But it was actually he that cheated off of me.
Yeah.
Well, my mother said, well, you cannot take back the 3 licks that you gave my daughter.
Right.
But I would greatly appreciate it if you would write us a letter of apology. One for myself and one for my daughter. It was only a couple of days, and we had 2 letters in the mail.
Yeah.
So to see my mother come in and step in and take up for me,
Right.
I didn't even have to ask because I didn't even know what happened until my mom got there.
Yeah.
And she started seeking to understand. She wasn't mad. She wasn't taking her anger or frustration out on anybody. She just went to find understanding as to what happened.
Yeah.
And just take care of whatever that was. And that's all she did. And she required that we be treated with dignity and respect.
Yep.
And though you can't take what happened, what happened that shouldn't have happened away, you can at least make it feel a little better
Right.
that it
Take
happened
the
in the
sting
first
off.
place.
Yeah,
Yes,
take the
exactly.
sting.
So I got to see that whole circle, and that was a lot to a little fifth grader.
Yeah, and power of character.
Yes.
And your mom, and it was a relationship that you had with your mom.
Totally. She
knew,
trusted
she
me.
trusted you enough to
Yes.
know, without any accusation, this
Yeah,
doesn't
this
sound
is
right.
not my daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
must be amiss.
Yeah, and it was, and
Totally.
she didn't quite know, but she was willing to work
I
through
got the
understanding.
benefit of the doubt.
Right.
That's missing, by the way, from humanity. The benefit of
Right.
the doubt.
People are
We don't
quick to
have
judge,
that.
quick to
Because
jump.
everybody's scared.
Yeah.
Everybody's scared.
I call it jumping to assumptions. I call it a jump assumption. It's it's a jump assumption. They
It's
jump
true.
right
That's
to the
exactly
assumption.
what it is.
They just
Jump
bypass all
assumption.
reason and jump right to the assumption.
Yes.
I'm going to read verbatim from one of your pages because it's so eloquently written. You do know how to write. It's
That's so
just-
funny that you say that. But thank you. Let me receive that compliment. Thank you very much.
This is what you wrote, and I think it carries a lot of power. Trust is such a funny little thing. How do you grow it? How do you give it to others? How do you build relationships so others trust you? Can you learn how if no one ever taught you, or is it possible to trust again when it's been broken by someone important in your life? And you had that.
Yeah.
Getting back to the quote, what happens if you choose not to trust? If you do decide to trust, is it a tiny word? Oh, it's a tiny word with a whole lot of power in my life.
Yes.
Your words, and that's what was lost in that moment was trust of the teacher, trust of the principal, the system.
The system.
The system you trusted in had betrayed.
Yes.
Yeah, and you got some of that back with the letters of apology. But again, fifth grader.
Yeah.
Why is this going this way? I didn't do anything wrong. And
Right.
That was
Instead of having a conversation with me,
yeah.
tried, convicted, and punished.
And punished.
Yes.
Yeah. And then mom came in with her cape. So as you grew, you got older, and you began that your dad stopped working, didn't he, as a firefighter?
Oh, he
EMT?
was 14 years. He was with
so
the
he was
fire
doing
department.
that.
Yep.
How did you
He kept retiring. He retired from the military, retired from the fire department. Yeah.
You guys, you started your own. The family started the business.
Oh, yes.
There was a business you started.
The Bed and Bath Linen Shop.
Bath and Bed Linen Shop.
Yeah.
Yes. Too early for a website, but
Yes.
in the 70s you started it.
Yes, we did. And shop was spelled SHOPPE because we were fancy.
We were fancy. So, and as it was a family business, you started working there.
Yes, very
You
early
learned
on.
the value of hard work, and you learned the value of $1.
Yes.
Tell us that introduction.
Oh, gosh. I was 6. From the time I was 6 until I was 14, we
Okay.
had that store. And I started out because I was all about making money. I wanted to earn money.
Yeah.
I wanted to earn money. I wanted to be a grown person. I wanted to earn money. And my parents taught me the envelope method.
Yeah,
Method,
right.
which means, all right, you wanted school supplies, your own kind, so you put school supplies on that one, and you put tithe or Jesus on one, and then you put, whatever else you wanted to save for. So whenever you got allowance or money, you would
Divvy it up.
divvy it up in your savings envelopes. So that's what they taught me to use. And
You had the value of $1. You began to learn it, but you were working for mom and dad.
right, and I started out carrying packages to people's cars. Now, here's this 6-year-old little tow-headed girl. That's White Cottonhead, by the way. In a mall, and this was in the middle of Oak Cliff, Texas, South Dallas. But back then, things were very different. So they trusted me to carry these strangers' packages to their cars
car.
for coins.
Yeah.
So that's where my work started. I
Yep.
was a package carrier outer person. I was the first Uber. Oh, just kidding. But also not just that started there, but then I wanted to know how to make change. Because when somebody bought something, they handed you money, you had to know how to make change.
That's right.
Otherwise, you didn't know if you got the right amount.
But math.
So before the end of my 6th year of life, I learned how to give change. And my daddy thought that was the funnest thing to show off to people, because here's this little bitty 6-year-old, and I'm counting it out penny to penny, quarter to, I mean, everything, just so. He was so proud. It was fun.
And it worked. And you did it for a long time. And your business grew.
Very much. We, let's see, from that first spot, it looked like a little closet. And from there, we moved 2 other places. The last place that we were was about 3,000 square foot of glass front.
Okay.
So it was big. It was a big, big store. And it was one of those highfalutin places that had, at the time, satin sheets were fancy.
Okay.
They'd just come out.
Just come out.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, we sold 24 karat gold toilet paper holders.
That's right.
I'm telling you, you've
right.
seen them at the estate sales. Yeah. Yes, you have. Those probably came from our store.
Yeah.
But no, we also offered a service as well. If you bought whatever you bought at the store, we would, for free, would come to your house and decorate your bathroom or your bedroom or whatever it is that you bought. So we would do that too. But then I would learn. I learned double entry journal for bookkeeping. Then I started taking over inventory control.
Yeah.
And we had different people working for us, family members, friends, things like that. And so then I started getting into payroll and payroll taxes and all that kind of stuff, and deductions. And yeah, by the time I was 12, maybe 11 or 12, Daddy and Mother were taking me to the Market Hall in the World Trade Center and Dallas Trade Mart, and they'd say, here's a list of stuff we need from this store and that store and that store, but you go in and you pick it out.
Yeah.
Because they felt like I was somehow aligned with modern world, because I was the kid, I was the youngest, and so I had my my finger on the pulse of what people like.
What was
I don't
trending.
know
Yeah.
I guess that's what it was. But to go into Market Hall as a 11 or 12-year-old with the skill set and the knowledge and experience to go in and buy product wholesale for a retail store, I don't know, that just felt really important.
Yeah.
Like a really big deal to me, to be trusted with such important things. So I loved it. I thrived. I flourished in being trusted with such important things. It taught me a lot.
You had money.
And I had money.
Yep.
And when you have money, you have authority in your own life. And we never had lots of money, but my parents worked very, very hard, and they knew how to thrift and to save. And they paid cash for everything. If Daddy wanted a new car, they saved the money to go and pay cash for that new car, and he drove it off the showroom floor. And then he had bragging rights to that sort of thing. But then they also didn't have debt either. Yeah. So anyhow, it was a lot of good things. A lot of good things.
As you got older, you actually began to, your circle of friends began to grow, and you ended up Sunday school, which led to church camp.
Oh, church camp.
So we'll close out this episode with church camp.
Is this a PG-13 episode,
It is
Rob?
PG-13.
All right, we'll start with that.
So church camp.
Yes, let's talk about church camp.
Yeah, I mean, the notes I wrote were softball, ping pong, swimming, jamming for Jesus, center field, and boys.
Gosh, oh boy. Oh, that is a suitcase to unpack, isn't it? Okay. Let me go to, I've got 2 particular church camps that these notes bring to mind. The first one was quite tragic. I was about 7 or 8 years old, I believe. And a good old church camp.
Yeah.
You stay for a week. You know, they got little cabins, and they've got the main building, where you have your snack bar and all that kind of stuff, and you got ping pong tables and pool tables and all that, and just common areas. And me and my girlfriends, we had been on the roster to be on the main softball field.
Okay.
Because they had the young people that would attend, and then we had our what did they call them? The ones that made sure you didn't get in trouble.
Chaperones?
Chaperones, yeah. That's them. We had our chaperones. And this particular camp, There was a man that was there, and one night he stood up in the little church deal outside and talked about, gave us his testimony of why he was at church camp. And he had a brand newborn baby at home. He had a daughter who was about my age, maybe a year older. And he had a disagreement with his wife because he felt the father was sending him to this church camp.
It was his time to go.
It was his time to go. And so he made the arrangements, everything, he's going to go, and his wife tried to talk him out of it. And so that caused a problem for him, and so he's sharing this with us. Well,
he was vulnerable for a moment.
Very vulnerable for a moment. So he had left his wife and newborn, and brought his older, their older daughter with him, and so he had left her in an argument, basically.
Yeah.
Well, so the next day, it's finally the end of the week, and me and my girlfriends, we've waited the whole week to get the main softball field. Well, as we're out there warming up, pitching the ball around, warming up, see the scorekeeper come over. She sits down. Great, we're getting ready to have our game. Finally, been waiting all week.
Where are you playing?
We're playing at church camp.
What position are you in?
Oh, I am center field.
Okay.
I'm center field.
I didn't know how good you were.
I'm real good. I'm real good. I'm real good because I was at second base and shortstop, but they wanted me out in center field so I could cover all of them.
Yeah.
So I was out in center field, and all of a sudden, as I'm watching everything come together, this guy, he's one of the men that's there as a chaperone, and he comes walking over and leans over and talks to the lady that's our scorekeeper. And then all the guys start walking up, the fellas at church camp. So now they've said that they're going to take the field back over, and I'm like, no, we've been on the roster, the waiting list all dadgum week. It's our turn to have our game on the main field. We've been over here in the field all week, so it's our turn. So I'm kind of pitching a fuss about it. Well, all my other friends are complaining about it, and so we look over there. We look at the scorekeeper lady. She's like, girls, there's nothing I can do. This is their sugar game. Apparently, they had played a couple of games and had tied, and they needed to play their sugar game. Well, I was not happy about the sugar game. I was madder than a hornet. Right. No. So just a little piece off of this main field is a little gravel road where the little side-by-sides would run up and down, going back and forth. And so they kicked us over there onto the practice field.
Sure.
So, man, I'm hunkered down. And
the men took the real field, and the women got subjugated to the...
Yes. It's nice that you understand how I feel.
Only because I can see your body
exactly,
language.
I'm seething.
I'm
just seething, yes. So I'm over there, and I'm hunkered down. I've got my glove in my hand, and I've got my hands on my knees, and I'm just looking at that center fielder where I was standing, and now he's standing, and I'm trying to drill holes in him. And I'm just really upset and mad because I'd been patient. I've been really patient. This was our turn. We waited for our turn. Well, next thing I see, they start playing their game, and next thing I see is I look up and there's the sky is crystal clear blue, and there is one little puffy cloud, and it's not as big as a dinner plate. Like from where I'm looking, it's not as big as a dinner plate, and it just comes across the sky, and then all of a sudden, I see that man in center field come up off the ground, and there's a lightning bolt underneath him and a lightning bolt on top of him. So he's sandwiched between this lightning bolt. And all I could do was take off running towards him because I didn't even know what I was looking at. I just knew the power I was feeling from whatever it was. And so I ran over there before anybody else could get to him, but he was already past the pitcher's mound. That lightning had blown him from center field to past the pitcher's mound. That's where he landed and fell in a heap.
On the infield?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I made it over there to him. It turned out that this lightning bolt came out of this little bitty, tiny little powder puff of a cloud in the sky, and it had so much power it lifted him up. I don't know how far off the ground he was, but it was a whole lot taller than any of the people that were standing out there behind the dugout. But he was way up off the ground, and when I got to him, his eyes were open. And he had a hole right where his belt was. He had a hole about the size of a grapefruit.
No kidding.
And I could see
Right through it.
right through it to the ground.
You could see the grass.
Yes, I could see the grass. Well, by this time, a couple of dudes ran up, and I find out later it's a police a couple of brothers that were off duty. One was a firefighter, and one was a police officer, and both of them were medics. So they pulled me away from him so that they could get in and start helping him. Well, it turns out that he was alive about 30 minutes. He lasted about 30 minutes because, it cauterizes.
Yeah.
It cauterized everything. So I saw a man that I was staring holes into fly up into the air, and a hole blow through him in the center of him, and he died right there.
Where you
in
were
my
in center
mind,
field.
he died right there. Yeah, right in the spot that I was just moments before standing in. Yes, and then when you include his testimonial the night before, that he knew he had to be there, and he didn't know why, but he knew he had to be there to the point where he was willing to leave his wife in an argument in order to follow what his heart told him to do, which to me was to stand in my spot
and take that hit.
For me. Now, what does an 8 or 9-year-old do with that information, Rob?
Not much.
There's nowhere to go with that.
Because you were just seething.
I was hating that man.
You were seething hate at him, and then he ends up being the victim of
laying his life down literally to save mine. Now, that's not what anybody knew was going to happen.
No, right?
No, there's no script. I never have gotten a script for any of this life that I've lived. But I knew that day that when I saw the look in his eyes was nothing except love. He went to love. And the last look I saw on his face was one of pure love.
In the moment.
And I carry that man's love with me to this day. Yeah.
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 Church camp.
Church camp.
Not your traditional story in your life.
No, that was a very different trip to church camp for me. Very different trip for church camp.
We'll call that an ender.
Let's do.
Yeah, let's end on that.
Let's do.
Your life with the divine, so finely attached, has its ups and downs. It has its lessons. It has its humbleness.
It hurts.
But his love, though it never goes away,
No.
it changes.
It does.
It changes. You see it deeper and layered, and it's always there.
Yeah, it is.
even
It's
through the
very
pain.
uncomplicated too.
It can be.
Yes. When you get it unlayered
Yeah.
in its purest form,
Yeah.
it is very uncomplicated.
We'll have more opportunity to talk.
Thanks for
I'm
this.
Rob Dalton. This is Story Time with Frog, F-R-O-G.
Veda McGregor. Ribbit, ribbit.
Ribbit, ribbit.
See
We
ya.
are fully reliant on God.
Every day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll talk to you on the next time you hit play.
Thank you.
And come back and see us. We have more church camp stories.
Oh, boy.
PG-13.
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 Thanks,
Thanks,
Rob.
everybody. We'll talk to you next time. Fully reliant on God. Ribbit, ribbit.
Ribbit,
God
ribbit.
bless.
Bye.